Hello and welcome to the Gradcracker webinar with Bird and Bird. My name is Sophie. I'm a director at Gradcracker and have been with the business for 12 years. I've been working with Bird and Bird for the last 4 years, and I'm really excited for you all to find out more about them and a career in law today. I'm also joined by my co-director, Jessica, who I'm sure many of you will recognise from previous webinars and the many university presentations she delivers. Jess?
Hello, everyone. Yes, as Sophie mentioned, my name is Jess. I'm also a marketing director and I've worked at Gradcracker for many, many years, nearly 15 years. I'm looking forward to speaking to Bird today to find out what's going on at their end and the opportunities they have.
Brilliant, thanks, Jess. So today, during the webinar, our aim is to find out more about Bird and Bird, their opportunities and what life is like to work there. Starting with our contact Lara from the Early Careers team, we'll have an introduction to the business and their opportunities. The rest of the panel will then talk to you about their educational background, the type of work they've been involved in so far, their journey to a career in law, and the training involved before starting their training contracts. The route to becoming a lawyer from a STEM background is a very different journey to many other graduate training schemes you may be used to. So we're also going to cover exactly how that works and open your minds to what amazing things you could do in a career in law. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll discuss the recruitment process and give you some hints and tips on how to be successful in securing a role with Bird and Bird, including some of the individual experiences of our panel. Now, if you've attended any of the webinars so far this season, you'll know that a new feature is that you can submit questions for us to ask our panel. So there will be some questions from you, our students, in the webinar today. So thank you to all the students and graduates who have taken the time to submit a question for the webinar so far. And if you'd like to submit a question for any of our future webinar guests, you can do so on the upcoming webinars page on Gradcracker. Okay, so let's get started. Lara, firstly, I'd like to get to know you a little bit. So you actually come from a STEM background and completed a training contract before moving into HR. So tell us all about that.
That's correct. Thanks, Sophie. Hi, everyone. As Sophie mentioned, I'm Lara. I'm the Senior Early Careers Manager at Bird and Bird. So I'll be able to tell you a bit about the firm and when we get onto it about our application process. But my background did begin with a chemistry degree at Exeter University, after which I did the law conversion course, followed by the legal practice course, and I trained at a city law firm just down the road from where Bird and Bird is now, before deciding actually my heart lay in HR, as I saw employment law kind of in action. And for the past 14 years, I've worked in city law firms across London, working in early careers. So early careers being the attraction, recruitment, selection, and HR for the trainee solicitor population. We do, anything and everything to do with applying or being recruited or working here as a trainee, is my responsibility. But it's been, as you can see, I've gone from STEM to law and back again, but still obviously love working in law firms. And I'm really excited to talk to you about the journey that our trainees go on, and typical trainees in City go through.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lara. I think it's great to hear, going from STEM to law to HR. It's just another avenue that, a lot of our audience might not have considered that, you can basically do anything with your STEM degree. So thank you very much for that. So now, could you tell everybody all about Bird and Bird, please, Lara?
I'll see how much I can manage in the short time that we have. And there is obviously more information on our hub on Gradcracker. So Bird and Bird, we're an international law firm. There are over 1,700 lawyers at Bird and Bird across 32 offices. You'll find us in Europe, North America, the Middle East, and the Asia Pacific regions. Many of our clients are names you would hear on, just regular household names, football clubs, the Premier League. We work for supermarkets. We work, lots of names that you'd hear about on kind of great, groundbreaking and quite newsworthy cases. The first case that we ever worked on was to do with the electric light bulb back in 1909. So we do have a really established history. Across the firm in London, we are a full service firm. So you will find intellectual property departments. We've got a commercial department, tax, real estate, corporate. If you come and train here, you're going to end up a well-rounded lawyer. And obviously, we'll talk more about the journey to getting there soon. We're also a sector focused firm. So that means regardless of what department you're in, our clients are really grouped into the sectors in which they work in. So examples of our sectors are entertainment and sport, life sciences and healthcare, or technology and communications. And we're really trying to use that sector approach and our legal expertise when applying all of the legal principles to support our clients achieve what they need to do. We are looking for trainees every year, and this is where you come in, and we need trainees, up to 18 trainees each year, to build into our growth pipeline. And really is, trainees are going to be the associates and partners of the future. So hopefully some of what I've just described about Bird & Bird appeals to those on this webinar.
No, that's amazing. Thank you, Laura. It's really good to get a good overview of the firm, the type of sectors you work in. You know, a lot of those sectors you mentioned are going to really appeal and really resonate with a lot of the audience here today. So moving on to the opportunities that you touched upon. So right now you have a range of opportunities open on the Gradcracker Company Hub. Could you tell us more about the different types of roles that you have?
Okay, so we're looking for trainees, and you can apply this year in 2 different ways to become a trainee. And that's either through a vacation scheme, or if you're looking to start a role in 2025 or 2026, you can apply directly for what's called a training contract. And the training contract is the 2-year graduate programme, which you need to undertake to become a qualified solicitor. If you apply for a vacation scheme this year, and this is where it gets a bit complicated for non-law students, you have to do what's called the conversion course. You might hear me call it the GDL, the Graduate Diploma in Law. And you also have to do another year of study to undertake what's called the Solicitors Qualifying Exams. I might call that the SQE. It's so that when you start your training with us, you've done all of the academic you're fulfilled all of the academic requirements you need for qualification as a solicitor. If you apply for a vacation scheme, that is a 2-week scheme where you will spend time in one department undertaking real work, as well as being assessed for that training contract place. The direct training contract assessment is without that 2 weeks. It's just the assessment. But we are, just to be really clear, we are phasing that direct approach out, which is why you can only apply for 2025 and 2026. Going forward, you'll only be able to get a training contract with us if you apply for a vacation scheme. So if you apply for a vacation scheme, you'll actually be considered for a training contract starting in 2027. Now, I'll try and break this down a bit. That's so that for those of you who are if you're in your final year, in a typical journey, a student in their final year would be graduating July 2025. They would spend a year from 2025 to 26 doing their graduate diploma in law, and then they would spend a year from 2026 to 2027 doing their SQE exams. That's where why there is that 2-year gap. But the good news is, if you do get a training contract with us, you do get you do the vacation scheme, get a training contract for 2027, we will pay all fees for your graduate diploma in law and for your SQE, as well as paying what we call a maintenance grant. So that's a payment, an upfront payment that you get in September each year to help you live during those 2 years of study. So it's £10,000 upfront for the graduate diploma in law, and at the moment £15,000 for your SQE year. Now, before you apply to those, you might also want to consider finding out a bit more about us. So obviously there's this webinar, there's our profile on the Gradcracker Hub, but you could also apply to an open day to us where you will engage in skill sessions, you'll meet our people. It's a virtual open day, so you don't even need to leave your bedroom, but you can speak to other members of the early careers team, current trainees and associates, to find out what it's really like to be a trainee at Bird & Bird and beyond. So trainee all the way to associate and even partner.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lara. That was a brilliant explanation. Very clear. And if you do need any more information, as Lara said, there's loads of information on the Gradcracker Company Hub. We have a specific page within the Bird and Bird Hub called STEM in Law, which again really explains the process. But yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for giving that overview. We're going to kind of move on now to our first student question, which has been submitted by Holly at Newcastle University. And Lara, she asks, why do you look for STEM students to join you specifically?
So I think firstly, a lot of people just assume you have to do law to get into law, and that's really not the case. Only a fraction, well, it might not be a small fraction, but less than half of our trainees actually come from law degree backgrounds. And every year we do look to recruit at least 25% from STEM. And that's for a range of reasons. We want diversity of thought. We want different approaches. Lawyers typically are very wordy. STEM adds an analytical side to things, a different way of thinking, a different approach. I mean, just thinking about my experience, I like the analytics of things. Give me an equation, that was great. I loved my tax seat actually when I was doing my training, because it was all numbers, and it all just really clicked for me. It made sense. But then also in our IP team, our intellectual property team, there are actually some very specific types of work that require scientific understanding. And that's not to say that we couldn't get a lawyer up to speed on that in time. But if someone understands how things work, or has that kind of interest in science or technology or engineering, maths, it really can add to the work they can do and the work they can produce. And so I'm given a very strict mandate each year, make sure we are recruiting those STEM. And we often see our STEM trainees qualify into intellectual property and other areas of the firm. Data protection is an area where we see STEM candidates qualify, and occasionally into dispute resolution. But it's that, I think it really is that analytical thinking, questioning, and maybe just I don't know, but it's really important to Bird and Bird that we get that in our program.
Yeah, fantastic. And hence why you've been advertising with Gradcracker for the last 4 years to attract those candidates into the business. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. And, going back to what you were saying at the beginning, Lara, with the different sectors that you work in, you can automatically associate how relevant the STEM skills will be into a lot of those industries. So thank you so much for that really good introduction.
We've obviously got the team on screen today, but we have got doctors, we've got pharmacy grads, we've got maths grads, we've got engineers, we've got chemists, we've got biologists. We tend to attract less physical scientists, something we're really keen to increase in our trainee intake, but we've got a lot, so but and IT as well. We're just the more the better, I think, from Bird and Bird perspective.
Thank you so much, Lara. We're going to come back to you towards the end of the webinar to run through the application process for these roles and some hints and tips that you can give our audience. But now we are going to head over to meet the rest of our panel. So we're joined by trainee solicitors Serena and Charlotte, and associate Imogen. So over to you, Jess.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. And Lara, I love that introduction. You can tell you're so passionate. So, really want students that are from a STEM background to consider the world of law. And I'm even myself thinking, yeah, this sounds great. It makes sense. So,
applications are open. Feel free to apply.
Oh, no, I don't have that beautiful mindset, unfortunately, like a STEM student does. But no, super interesting. So thank you for that. You're looking forward to hearing about the application process later on. But Serena, I'm going to come to you first. Can you introduce yourself and tell me and everyone else all the great things that you've been doing so far? So where you went to university, what you studied, and what you've been up to so far at Bird and Bird.
So at my undergraduate level, I went to St. George's University Hospital of London. I imagine many of you have not heard of this university before, and that's because it just does healthcare related degrees. So I actually studied medicine, and I have been working as a doctor for the last think I hit the 8th year, and before I started working at Bird and Bird this September. What else would you like to know?
Oh, I want to know everything. So why then? What was the transition for you personally then, if you don't mind, asking? Obviously, you kind of had that obvious career journey plan ahead of you, thinking you were going to go into that route. Why did you transition, and what was the kind of attraction for you for Bird and Bird?
My story is a little unique, and I won't drag it out for you guys today, but essentially I went to medical school really passionate about women's health, and I still am very passionate about that. But as soon as I was working as a doctor within women's health, so obstetrics and gynecology, within the first week of my job, I was crying in my car, and I knew that this was not the rest of my life. And I just thought, what's the most interesting parts of my job? And I realized there's so many things in women's health that come up that are actually legal and medical, and those were the things that attracted me the most. So I thought, why don't I study law? So I did a master's in medical law and fell in love with it, and after that I was like, oh, I just think I want to be a lawyer.
Oh, I love that. I'd wake up one day, I think I'm going to be a lawyer. You did it, and you're doing it, so that is absolutely incredible. So that's quite a transition and quite a decision to make. So how did you kind of find that transition? So again, what did you do first? What was kind of the first part of the journey like for you? As Lara kind of mentioned, how was kind of doing your GDL, your graduate
diploma
in
law?
How was that, and how was the kind of first steps towards working towards being a trainee solicitor?
Yeah, so I think mentally for me to go from, like you touched on, it's a very laid out path and you're supposed to go up the ladder. And so I actually think law presents that, and you can do so many things with a law degree, like Lara demonstrates as well. You don't have to follow the ladder, but equally there is a ladder if you want to follow it. And that's something that I think is really exciting about law. So when I was just exploring the option of adding law to my medical job, it was leaning that way. And then the deeper I got into my master's, the more I realized I didn't want medicine to be what defined me anymore. I wanted to just move most of my life into the realm of law. And then at that point, I started exploring options, and luckily managed to get a place with Bird and Bird, which really values the contributions of my previous degree and experience. And then doing the GDL, honestly, my advice to anyone would be it's just a load of volume. And actually, if you wrap your head around the volume, the content of it is not especially difficult, and anyone on this call will be super intelligent and will definitely be able to get through that content. It's just believing that you can do it. And then the SQE was new.
Oh, was it? You did do that one, did you?
Yeah, Charlotte and I both just did the SQE, but we made it. Again, I think it's a lot of volume, and actually when you believe and when you see people that have been able to do it, it gives you so much confidence that you can do the same thing. And then here we are figuring it out again.
Wow. Well, Serena, you made that process sound very easy, to be honest. So to go back a step again, so Charlotte, you can chip in here as well. We will do a proper introduction to you in a second, but going back to talk about the GDL and the SQE, they're full-time courses then. So again, I was kind of asking Sophie a bit about this before the session. So again, for the students and the audience that are listening, they could sound quite scary and almost put people off slightly. So could you talk us through that slightly? How did life look like for you whilst you were doing those 2 years? So is it a full-time, how did you manage yourselves, and what was you doing, and how did you get through it?
I give my perspective first, and then we'll go to you, Charlotte.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So yeah, I just did them in a row. So I've just done the GDL and then the SQE over the last 2 years. And so you go to, at the moment, we're partnering with ULaw. So we essentially attend classes, normally as a cohort as well, which is really nice because you get to know your peers, and you go through it all together. But yeah, I think we had to attend 2 to 3 days a week, but it is a full-time course. So when you're not there, you are expected to be studying and working through the volume that you need to get through. You do need that time to be able to actually study everything and feel confident with the work. But I mean, for me, for example, and at my undergraduate, I had to be in a hospital from 9 to 5. So to have 2 days of the week where I get to actually just work through
was
content was
luxury.
great.
Yeah.
That's what my evenings and weekends have been for before. So I thought that was great. And I think there will be a lot of other people who have taken on work, or depending on what undergraduate they're looking into, they have that same expectation. So should be fine for them.
Yeah, definitely. And Serena, if you don't mind me asking, could you fit in, say, a part-time job? So, if you needed extra money, or, if you were in a situation like that, did you find time you could juggle and have a part-time job, or did you just not have time really to do that on top of it?
I think it really depends on the person and what the needs of that person are. Obviously, there will be situations where people do need to support their families, or they do need extra support, and actually the firm is really helpful in that regard. So what I'd say is just maintain open lines with Lara and her team, and you can work it out on a case-by-case basis, and they're very receptive to that. So yeah, I did work a little bit while I did my GDL, and a little bit last year, just because I wanted to keep up. I don't know, when you've done a job for that long, it's actually quite nice to just do it on the side, and it feels like, oh yeah, I am good at something when you're learning all this extra content. So for me, I found it helpful. But I didn't work a lot at all, because it is a lot that you have to get through.
Yeah, to reiterate a little bit, hi everyone, on what Serena was saying, I would treat the GDL and the SQE like a full-time job. And so I guess it just depends who you are as a person, and whether, if you're treating it like a proper 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever, you want to then also do another job on the weekend. If that's how you work, then I think it is possible. But personally, I then needed the 2 days off to just sort of rest my brain a little bit, and then carry on Monday and really give it my all, because I think that is a little bit how the courses are designed. I think so for me, I did the PGDL before I got my training contract, so I financed it myself. And I did it 2 years before as well. So there was a little bit of a gap. And I did that full time, but after that I worked. And I think some people can, if they are choosing to self-finance until they get a training contract, they can also decide to do some of these courses part-time. So they do offer them in slightly different ways. But I think if you do get sponsored by a firm, then there is the expectation to do it with your cohort as the firm sort of wishes, which tends to be full-time, and sort of dedicate your time to it, because it is at the end of the day a full-time job.
Which makes sense.
Could I just pitch in for a minute? I was going to say, like, Charlotte's made a really good point. If you are self-funding, you can do the GDL part-time. You can also do it remote learning. There are lots of different avenues. And I just, again, thinking of kind of the STEM challenge. When I went and did my GDL, I had been doing 3 afternoons of labs. I was in uni 5 days a week. I think my uni timetable was like 35 hours. When I went and did the GDL, I was like, oh, this is nice. And I was sitting next to candidates on the GDL, or students on the GDL, who'd come from English degrees and history degrees, who'd done like two contact hours a week. And they were completely floored by all the contact time. So it is a lot of work. But I'd say that this audience is probably used to that level of contact and work. So there is a lot to expect, but you can do this. Like, you've all got this if you've got that background.
Yeah, I agree. I think even biology, there's enough lab time and contact time in there where you really prime yourself for something like this. So it didn't at all ever, and I'll get onto that in a bit actually, but didn't at all ever feel like an overwhelming course. It was very interesting throughout, and actually I'd rather have done it, and I wouldn't have changed anything. If I went back to it now and chose a degree, I wouldn't have not done biology and done law straight away. I think having done biology and having that sort of very different side of me is valuable, and it has been really helpful.
And Serena, would you say the same for you then so far? You wouldn't have changed your journey, your career journey?
Never changed my journey. I am who I am because of the way I came through. And I also met so many important people in my life, the route I came through, and we align on so many values because of that past. So I think that just makes you more confident moving forward in your future.
Yeah, love that. I love it. Oh, so good. So inspiring. Charlotte, just quickly, we didn't kind of officially introduce you. So just to tell the audience, so you obviously studied biology, where you went to university, and what else do I need to know about you? Where you went to university
and how long I've been
there. That's all.
Yeah.
So yes, hello everyone. So I went to the University of Bristol, and obviously I did biology there for 3 years. I chose Bristol initially and sort of biology because my sort of background in the sort of A-level subjects was very sciencey, and so law wasn't really an option, even though I'd always kind of thought about it in the back of my mind, because I was always sort of drawn to the idea of being a lawyer, but I didn't really know what it was, and science was always a bit more of a natural path of progression for me. So yeah, then I did biology at Bristol. I mean, it was a great university. They had a great science department backed by David Attenborough. I mean, what more could you want? And so yeah, and I really enjoyed my time there. And I think my sort of transition into law stemmed from an initial interest in patent law. So that was a sort of most natural progress for me, which a patent attorney, for those who don't know, and the way I describe it, is a slightly more technical version of a lawyer who would work in intellectual property. So they often tend to kind of overlap a little bit or work together.
Yeah.
But I would say a patent attorney in most cases would require that science background and requires sort of a lot of more technical knowledge, often to the level of a master's degree or a PhD even. And so when I was doing initial sort of work experience in that field, I liked it, but I actually found myself enjoying the legal side of it a lot more than the science technical side.
Yeah.
And so that for me was sort of my boost or affirmation, if you will, to say, no, actually have a look into the legal career, because if you're not so keen on, and in my case, doing a master's or continue my journey in the lab, as you will, I kind of then was drawn to sort of the more commercial side of things, which is why I ended up ultimately applying for law. And then naturally, Bird & Bird just felt like a really good fit for me because of their sort of expertise in life sciences, and also just the way that they value STEM students. I mean, I think when you're doing a career change like that, or not often, but sometimes you might question yourself thinking, have I just wasted my time as an undergraduate doing science? But, going to a firm like Bird & Bird, who they'll actually value that background, and they'll see it as a good thing. So then that kind of reaffirmed my choice for me. And then just about my role, I'm obviously a trainee solicitor, and I'm in my first seat, and I'm currently in the finance and financial regulation department.
And just to jump in there, at law firms, seats are basically the equivalent of a rotation that you might know.
I was just about to go there. So yeah.
Sorry, darling.
No, good. That's go explain.
So when you might look at other graduate training schemes, they might be called rotations or placements. In law firms, they're called seats. So just if we talk about seats moving forward, so everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Sophie. And do you know what? It's really interesting, isn't it? Because before again, I was saying before this session, Sophie, you kind of prepped me on Bird & Bird, and I kept thinking as a STEM student, why law? But it's almost becoming quite, we're only 28 minutes into this session, and you can start to see quite quickly why a STEM student would want to do law, and how that, that worry or feeling of, could it be, am I at a disadvantage because I haven't done a law degree? Actually, no, you're bringing a lot more potentially, with your mindset, how you think, the skills you've already learned. So if anything, anyone who is considering it by the sounds of it, you're bringing a lot more than just a degree as well. You're bringing your experience, what you've known, and what you've learned so fast. It's all good. I'm excited for students that are thinking of considering it for them. Right. Okay. Imogen, sorry, I'm going to come to you. I apologize. We're nearly halfway through this webinar. We haven't
It's gone so quick already.
I know, it does. Always does. So I do apologize. So Imogen, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your journey and your experience so far at Bird & Bird.
Thanks, Jess. So hi, everyone. I'm Imogen. I'm an associate in the intellectual property team here at Bird & Bird. So as an associate, I've finished my training contract, and I'm a qualified solicitor, and I've been qualified for around 5 years. And I've been at Bird & Bird for about 2.5 of those years. Okay. So my story, I did biochemistry at the University of Manchester, and I chose to do biochemistry because I really like biology and chemistry and thought it'd be a really good topic to do, and I really enjoyed the science, and I still do really enjoy science. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do intellectual property law. So my transition from science to law started when I was doing a placement year during my degree. So I worked in a lab for around a year, which was really informative for me because it really made me realize that I didn't want to work in a lab going forward. So I was like, okay, I need to choose something different. I don't want to do a PhD. So I started then to look into alternative careers, and I really want to do something where I could use my science background. So a little bit like Charlotte, I looked into patent attorney, but also the legal side of things as well. I was like, oh, maybe I can be a solicitor and focus on IP law. So I sort of did some research into that, attended some open days. So I definitely recommend an open day to all the students here. I think they're really informative. And ended up getting a training contract at a different firm. And that's sort of how I ended up moving into law. And I've really enjoyed it so far.
So you've been at Bird Bird for 2 years. Could you tell us, and am I allowed to delve slightly, Imogen, and
Sure.
kind of things, your day-to-day life, what does it look like for you, the team that you work in, and how has Bird Bird supported you so far over the last 2 years?
So I'm in the intellectual property team at Bird Bird. The IP team is really large, so we cover all types of intellectual property. So that's from, they call it soft IP, so that's trademarks, copyright, designs, things like that, and also patents. And so I'm actually working the patent team, and within that I focus on life sciences patents. So I'm using my biochemistry background. So there's quite a few of us who focus on that type of thing. So we work for pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, doing mainly patent litigation, but also doing some regulatory side of things, sort of applying for marketing authorizations for drugs and looking at the regulatory regime. And in terms of training and things like that, so you have quite a structured training when you're doing a training contract. Then once you become an associate, you still have ongoing training, probably not quite as much as you do as a trainee, but Bird Bird is really good. They offer lots and lots of training sessions, and it's all tailored to the level that you're at. So junior associates will have different training to mid-level to senior associates. And there's always a lot of new training sessions coming up that are really helpful.
Yeah, brilliant. Charlotte, I was going to answer this question at you. So again, you can add to this as well. But Imogen, I feel like you've kind of answered my next question that I was going to ask. And it was a question that we had submitted from Hamza at Southampton University. And the question was, do you feel that you are at a disadvantage from not doing a law degree? But I'm getting the vibe quite strongly that you're not. And Imogen, with you just saying what you've just said, could you answer Hamza's question yourself rather than me be telling them that there won't be?
Yeah, I think definitely not at a disadvantage. You've got some people do law degree, but as we've touched on before, about 50% don't do law, and you get a really big mix of different degrees. STEM, but also, people do history and English and things like that. Everyone has to do the GDL, so you have that grounding in law anyway. But I think actually gives you an advantage over certain other people because you're coming from a different perspective. You've had that scientific training. Again, we touched on it before, you have that analytical brain, so problem solving, and that's really helpful when you're doing a training contract and working as a lawyer, because you have lots of different things that require you to analyze lots of data or reading documents and summarizing. And I think having that STEM background can be really useful in that. And you do bring a different perspective to someone who's just done law.
Yeah. I would agree with what Imogen said. And also, I mean, the GDL, or as it's now known as the PGDL, it preps you for everything that you could possibly need to know going forward in your career as a lawyer. And so you really do get those good foundational basics sorted. And then by the time you do the SQE as well now, after it's changed since the LPC, it is so in depth and it covers so much information that really when day one of your training contract, I don't think you could differentiate necessarily by legal knowledge who did law at undergrad or who didn't, because you all have the same basic knowledge at the end that is relevant for your career as a lawyer.
Really
and this is the reason that you have to do the the PGDL and the SQE. It's to get you up to that level, isn't it? Exactly. So by the time you join as a trainee, like you said, there's no difference in the knowledge that you've all got. So yeah, I think that's a really good explanation, Charlotte. Thank you.
Yeah. So next week, Sophie, you give a lovely explanation of the seats and how that works and what that really does mean. But Serena, I'm going to come back to you on this one. If you can just explain what your first seat was or currently is and how that's looking and working for you.
I'm currently in my first seat.
Still in your first seat.
So I'm doing a rotation in dispute resolution, so essentially litigation. And we get cases from all different aspects of the firm, all different sectors, and it's really diverse. So really, really exciting. And this would be contrasted with a seat like Charlotte's, which they called transactional. So litigious means that you're kind of looking at things that might end up in court one day or maybe in an arbitration, which is like a different form of mediating between parties. And then you've got transactional, which is like building businesses, creating things together. So one of the things that people used to say to me to try and put me off doing law when I was younger is that it's all about having a negative impact on someone's life or business, and that's not true at all. There's so many ways that you can contribute and make a real difference to people, businesses, society by being a lawyer. So just to combat that stereotype.
And I think personally as well, from again, I've only haven't known you for long so far, but your personal drive and motivation, you said why you went to go and study originally what you went to study. By the person that I think, I can see of you, you want to make a change. You want to make a positive change, a positive impact. You want to give back. You want to change things that are wrong almost. So yeah, you wouldn't be doing it. And, you wouldn't sit there and say that now if that was the case. So again, that's a really good point to make. So next, I want to kind of talk a bit, and both of Charlotte and Serena, you can answer this. So from where you are at now to becoming Imogen in the future, how long does it take for you to turn into an associate and become the next Imogen, for example? What's the journey after this?
Serena, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So Charlotte and I are in our training contract, so it will take us 2 years to get to the end of that process.
Yeah.
And then it's like they say you qualify into a seat. So essentially you specialize into a department, and then you start building your career from that level upwards. So that's what they'd call a junior associate or a newly qualified solicitor. You might hear people use the term NQ solicitor, that just stands for newly qualified. And then Imogen's obviously been working for 5 years, I think you just said, Imogen. So you just essentially work up the ladder until you get to a senior associate level, and then you're looking at being a partner if you want to climb the ladder. And again, I reiterate, you don't have to do that.
So
Yeah. And just to sort of add to that, so in your 2 years as a trainee, you tend to rotate. So every firm will have slightly, or most firms are the same. Some firms have slightly nuance to this. But the traditional route is to do 4 rotations of 6 months within one department, which is called a seat. You tend to get a choice as to where you want to go next. So you can kind of design your own next 2 years, if you will, dependent on your interests. So, for me, I joined the firm for IP, so I'd be looking to do that at some point in my life in the next 2 years to sort of see if that's really all I've thought it would be for me. But yeah, so and that's sort of that thing, so that you can really tailor it to yourself, because everyone's really different and everyone might have different motivations for wanting to do law. And so it's really great to do a training contract to sort of get to trial different things and then decide which one you like best, and that will be sort of the seat that you might try to apply for a newly qualified position.
Yeah, brilliant. Perfect. Thank you for that, Charlotte. Imogen, I'm going to come back to you with kind of my last question, then we're going to talk to you all a little bit more about the recruitment process. But Imogen, for you, and obviously assuming you are, again, please do correct me if I'm wrong, obviously looking to climb that ladder, at any point can you diversify whilst you climb the ladder in terms of particular areas of Bird and Bird that you want to work in, working on particular cases, or again, obviously you've got that focus now with the biochemistry. Can you diversify out of that if you wanted? And how would Bird and Bird support you with that as well if you did decide to transition in the business but into another area?
Yeah, so I think Bird and Bird is good because, well, from my experience in the IP team, it's quite a big team, cover lots of different areas, and we're not strictly in different groups, although I tend to say work in the life sciences team. I'm not we don't have a specific team which is life sciences. We're one big team overall. So if I wanted to get involved in, say, telecoms, I would just have to go and ask the people who work in telecoms and say, oh, I'm interested in doing this. Is there any work available? Or if I say I wanted to do a trademark matter, the same, I could go and speak to people in trademarks. So there is the opportunity to different types of work once you're qualified. It's trickier to switch to, say, another specialism. So say I wanted to go and do tax or real estate. That'll be tricky once you've sort of got in and qualified into a certain team. You can do that, but people tend to, once you've chosen where you're going to go, people tend to stick with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right, perfect. That sounds like a great introduction to the world of law. So thank you very much, guys. So if I'm going to hand back to you, because I know we're going to find out all about the recruitment process, and Lara, we're going to go into a little bit more detail on how, when, why, and what everyone should be doing next.
Thank you very much, Jess. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Before I come back onto the recruitment process, actually, Imogen, I just wanted to stick with you a little bit more, just to find out more about, we've covered so much about the training and how to become a lawyer, but what's life like at Bird & Bird? I mean, in terms from a day-to-day working life, social, all that sort of stuff, what have you found, since you've been with the firm?
Oh, I really enjoy working at Bird & Bird. We have a very nice office in London with free coffee. So I think that's a good encouragement for everyone to come in. So yeah, a really nice office. We come about 3 days a week, work from home 2 days a week. There are usually, in terms of social events, a reasonable number going on. I know as trainees, you tend to have quite a few different things, but there'll be drinks that different departments put on, and then within the IP team there'll be monthly social events, then a few external things. If you work in IP, there's various societies that put events and drinks things on. So last week I went to an event organized by one of the barristers' chambers that we all work with, which was really fun. In terms of other day-to-day things, the job is quite varied. It really depends on what stage you are. Say you're working on a big litigation, what you're going to do will depend on what stage. So it might be speaking to an expert witness, it might be doing a disclosure exercise. Then you get to go to court, which is very fun at the end. Doing lots of emails, you can't get away from that, unfortunately. But yeah, it is quite varied, which is quite a nice thing, is you're not stuck doing the same type of thing every single day.
I think that's really come across so far in the webinar, is that, the amount of different things that you would be involved in as a lawyer. There's so many different types of cases, different types of technologies, different types of industries that you'll be working with, no matter what area you kind of specialize in. There's especially in a firm like Bird & Bird that works across so many different sectors. So I do feel like that's really come across, and it's great for our audience to hear as well about what life is like when they're going to get there. Are there things for them to get involved in, especially if people are relocating, maybe not local to London and things like that. They want to know they're going to have that kind of team around them to get to know with. And as you've mentioned as well, Charlotte and Serena, throughout the training, through the PGDL and the SQE, you're in your cohort, you're getting to know people that you're going to be working with, which is going to be a really nice support network as the students and graduates progress through that training too. So that's all been really, really helpful for us. So I am going to come back to you now, Lara, to talk about the recruitment process. So as we've mentioned, the roles are all currently live on Gradcracker. So when the students click on that job description to apply, what are the next steps for somebody applying to a vacation scheme or training contract?
So the vacation scheme and training contract applications look the same. It's the process after that. But you've got to get that application form looking great. Last year, and this isn't to scare anyone, but this is just to be, to put things into context, we received over 2,500 applications for our vacation scheme and training contracts combined. So over 2,500 applications for what was ultimately 18 spots. So it starts with producing a fantastic application form. So before you even get to that application form, read all about us on the Gradcracker Company Hub. Do your research, apply for an open day before you apply to a vacation scheme. Come along on that day, or join on that day, not come along, but join on that day. Ask your questions, speak to different people on the day, attend the skill sessions, and then when you write that application, you've got a bit more to say.
Yeah.
The application includes an academic section, a work experience section, and then we ask you some specific questions. The application form's got to be perfect. Okay, so you've got to make sure your spelling, punctuation, grammar is correct. You know, so often we'll look at the list of kind of degree subjects or modules, and you know, none of them start with a capital letter. Don't let your basic English go out the window on even the basic things on an application form. If there is a word count, fill it, you know. And while I would say, and an area that we find a lot of STEM candidates fall down is that they're almost too precise and analytical in their answers. Yes, we want that, but this is where you've got to go from, if you're a numbers person, you've got to use your words to get across your interest in law. And while we're super interested in you as a STEM candidate, this is a role as a trainee solicitor. So we need to know not just what's in your background, but why you're going to be the best trainee. You absolutely need to use the limited resources you have in this application form to really get across why it should be you amongst those other 2,500, 3,000 candidates that we get. So, and then finally, I would say you might look at a deadline and think, oh, I've got, you know, and it's actually only 2 weeks until our training contract deadline. The deadline could be tomorrow. We operate rolling recruitment. That means we screen as they come in. I can guarantee you, if you apply on the deadline, it will be too late. You know, but we still leave it open because who knows, you know, we are screening and we'll continue to screen until we get to that point. But we will, if we get to a point where we've filled our assessment centre places, we will have to stop screening. So apply early. And it is a balance, because you might say, well, Laura, you just said go to an open day before I submit the application. Our open days are timed because we know that in October, when our open days are, we won't have completed rolling recruitment. So if you want to do that, go to the open day and then submit a really considered, thoughtful application. This application should take you hours, not minutes. And that's why you can't apply to loads of firms across the city, because there's just simply not enough time in the year to do that. So you have to really think, you know, read the question, answer the question. Think when you're entering your skills, and actually some of this is relevant to any graduate application you would make, right? You know, but when you are filling out those work experience sections, because you've done all of your research on us and you know what we're looking for, draw out the skills on those work experiences that again showcase what you've got. It could be anything, you know, and we want to know it all. We want to know if you've worked in Sainsbury's. I want to know if you've worked in McDonald's, as well as if you've done any lab work or if you have got any legal work experience. But you know, I worked in Sainsbury's during sixth form. It taught me great teamwork. You know, when you're working on a team, you know, it taught me how to communicate with different people, the customers, compared to, you know, my team. You know, there's all these things that can relate back, and you won't even realize you've been doing it. And if you haven't got work experience, I would really encourage you to think about getting some, because we are looking for all-round people. You might have the best academics, but we need to know that there's more to you than that as well. So if you know, and that could be volunteering, doesn't have to be paid. See what you can do. It could be working with societies or other things like that, where you've built up positions of responsibility. The other thing you could do is also do our online virtual experience program, which is a way that you can find out more about us. So that is a way, and that's, you know, you can get to that through our website, through the Gradcracker hub. You know, there are ways you can find out more before completing that application. I know I've spent ages on the application, but if you don't get that right, you're not going to move to the next stage.
No.
The next stage is a Watson Glaser test. Watson Glaser test critical thinking. And we know at Bird and Bird, through internal projects that we've done with external occupational psychologists, that critical thinking is a skill that our successful trainee solicitors and associates possess. So we need to assess critical thinking at a really early stage. That's why we use the Watson Glaser compared to other psychometric testing. You need to hit a benchmark, which will change year on year. So I can't tell you what that benchmark is, but we give you a practice test. If you get to that stage, the practice test is in the invitation. Use the practice test. Practice. Okay, you know, that's there for you to try out. if you get past that stage, it's a video interview. So this is where we're going to see you for the first time on a video interview. It's a pre-recorded video interview. It's not a live interview. So you do have the chance to do it in the comfort of your home or an office or a university breakout room. Again, there's a practice question, but once you start recording, you can't stop the recording, right? So you do only get one chance to answer, which is why it's a little bit pressured. But we're assessing your motivation. We're assessing your ability to work under pressure, to think on your feet. If you have done the research, the proper research that you needed to do before submitting that application, there's no reason why you won't be successful on that video interview, because there should be no surprises there. And then, yes, it is the longest recruitment process in the world. But if you get through all those stages, we'll then invite you to an assessment centre, which involves a written task and a face-to-face interview. And for the vacation scheme, that is virtual still, because we know we'll see you on the vacation scheme. If it's for a training contract, this is where the process differs. It would be an in-person assessment centre, and you would also do a group exercise on that in-person day. But we don't do group exercises on the virtual. We know that is incredibly difficult to achieve well in. All of our competencies are on the website, which you can get to through the Gradcracker hub as well. But all of those competencies are tested throughout the recruitment process. So if you know what those competencies are, and those competencies have been developed because that's what our successful trainees possess, think about how you can demonstrate them. Is it in how you behave? Is it in the words you use? Is it in the examples you give? But our process, I think, is very transparent, and at each stage of the process, when you're invited, we tell you what we're looking for. Okay, so read those invites to the next stage. There should be no surprises. And then on the VAC scheme, if you get onto that, it is a bit of a 2-week interview. It's about bringing the best version of yourself to those 2 weeks, knowing that you're going to be assessed, but also relaxing enough to see if you like us. It's a 2-way interview, really. And both Charlotte and Serena did participate in the vacation scheme with us. I think that was in 2022. For both, or 2023. So
mine was actually last year. So
was it last year? 2023, and then Serena 22. So So sorry, I don't want to talk too much longer. I feel like I'm taking up all the time.
No, that's brilliant.
Yeah,
I mean, I could see
advice,
Jessica smiling all the way through that. Your advice for putting an application together and drawing on those experiences that you've had. It's exactly what Jess and I will talk to the students about Jess more so than I, when she's doing her university presentations, is utilising, whether you've worked in a cafe or at McDonald's or Sainsbury's, and use those skills that you can draw upon for team working and collaboration and dealing with different types of people are so important. And it's great to hear you talk about that and how a student can utilize that in the application process, because that's exactly what we've been saying as well. So it's always lovely to get that message out there. And also, I think it's so important for candidates to know exactly what that process is going to be. Like you said, the process is very transparent. We've got the process for both the vacation scheme and the training contract on the Gradcracker hub, step by step. But like you said, all the way through that process, if you do progress through the steps, you are going to be given that detailed instruction too, as to what's going to be expected. So I think that was a brilliant overview, Lara. Thank you very much. I'm going to come to Charlotte and Serena quickly now, just on a couple of points, because obviously you've been through the process here. You've experienced these tests. Serena, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Watson Glaser test, and what your experience of completing that was. And Lara's touched upon what you're kind of looking for, but if you could give us kind of an overview of your experience of that.
So the Watson Glaser test, how could I forget? You usually get 40 to 80, depending on what firm you'll apply to, 40 to 80 questions in this Watson Glaser test across 5 disciplines, essentially. So it's asking you about inferences, making deductions, evaluating information that's presented for you, interpreting information, and like whether anyone in it is making an assumption or not. Those are the 5 main categories. And I have to say, I think a STEM background really lends itself to you doing well in this assessment. I think everyone I know that's come from a STEM background into law has generally found that they almost enjoy dare I say, aspects of the Watson Glaser test, because, you know, I think it exhibits a lot of the reasons why we thought to go into STEM in the first place. And
Yeah.
even if you are not very good at one area or two, you can excel in other ones. So it's really about overall how you perform. So hopefully no one should be put off by that. You can also, Lara said, practice, practice, practice. It makes a world of difference to even the same paper. If you give it a week between you practicing it, you can still improve your result, because you will learn how it's asking you to answer. And that itself is a skill.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Serena. And Charlotte, we're going to talk about the Virtual Assessment Centre and your experience of taking part in that. Can you explain, you know, a little bit more about what was involved and how you kind of might have prepared for that assessment centre?
Yeah, of course. So I think before the assessment centre, you have that sort of video interview stage, which is obviously quite separate, but a good practice step as well at the same time. So assuming you get past that, so the video interview, you kind of have sort of prompted questions and a set time to answer, and it's all sort of recorded, so there's no one on the other side. And for that one, I would just recommend practicing and recording yourself with standard interview questions, and also just learning how to say them in a quite concise way, because you don't get too much time to answer them. But obviously you don't want to over rehearse at the same time. There's a fine
balance.
line. Yeah, it's a balance. But assuming you've done a good amount of practice, that will actually be really useful for the assessment centre stage, because there you sort of have a written exercise task, which will be sort of based on a case study or something like that, where you go away and you have a set amount of time to read through a load of facts. It'll just test your skills, your sort of analytical skills, your writing skills, just what they want to see in a trainee solicitor. And I guess I can't remember how I exactly prepared for those, other than, making sure my sort of grammar skills and writing skills were up to scratch. But I think that's the extent of it, and just making sure that your knowledge about the firm is really up to date. That's probably the key bit. You want to make sure that all your answers are really specific to Bird and Bird, which you can all find on the Gradcracker Hub site. So that's really key. And I think then the interview, again, is a sort of, it tends to be a follow on from the case study, the written element a little bit. And then I guess, I can't remember if it was for that, but Lara, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a sort of element as well where they get to know you a little bit. So yeah, again, just having your facts about the firm ready, knowing why your motivations behind applying to Bird and Bird is really key.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. That's a really good overview. Thank you all so much for giving us such a great insight into Bird and Bird today. I feel like we probably could sit here for about another 2 hours talking to you all about your experiences and, why to do to apply to law if you are coming from a STEM background, because it sounds like all your different journeys are so different, but also you've all got that passion for law. So it's been really great to hear your journey so far. Now, the recording of this webinar will be available for you to watch in full tomorrow on the Bird and Bird Gradcracker Company Hub. We'll also then break this up into sort of bite-sized highlights covering some of the key topics that we've discussed today. And remember, our employers absolutely love it when you tell them that you have watched their webinar, because they know that means that you've already have a really good understanding of their company, and it shows you have a real interest in working for them. So make sure you go and get your applications in for Bird and Bird and let them know that you are here today. On Monday at 2 p.m, Carla and I will be talking to INEOS. So register your interest, submit any questions you might have, and we hope that you will join us then. Thank you once again to everybody from Bird and Bird. It's been fantastic. And yeah, goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.